Today in episode 42 of the podcast, we're going to be breaking down our coverage of Cincinnati Comic Expo 2024, including panels and discussions that we had with the cast of X-Men 97, Katee Sackhoff, Kevin Eastman, and a lot more. I'm Brad, he's Josh, and welcome to We'll Bring the Popcorn.
Welcome everyone, and if this is the first time tuning into this podcast, we drop new episodes every Monday. Please go to willbringthepopcorn.com for all our social media information, including our merch giveaway. We're in the final days of the merch giveaway, where you can get a version of our new We'll Bring the Popcorn t-shirt, as well as a 4K copy of Godzilla -1, which includes Godzilla -1 Color, which is one of our favorite films of 2023. Very excited for that. We'll be drawing the winner of our giveaway on the next episode. Thank you for everyone who has entered in so far, and don't forget, you got until Friday to get your last entries in. Looking forward to giving that away to the next viewer.
Yeah, and while our sale on our merch store has ended, we'd love if you went and checked out the merch and stuff we had available. We've got a ton of shirts, hoodies, beanies, a bunch of stuff for wintertime. It helps support us, helps us keep, going strong with this. But we had a great time with the Cincinnati Comic Expo. This was the first year that it was at the Sharonville Convention Center, because its normal home is the Duke Energy Convention Center in downtown Cincinnati. It's under a multi-year refurbishment. I think it's like 2026, 2027 before it'll be ready. So a lot of things have moved, even, sad for us. Reds Fest is normally held at Duke Energy Convention Center. It's been canceled because of the refurbishments. But, the Sharonville Convention Center normally for conventions and stuff, it's normally known around here for Horror Hound. And we were curious exactly how that was going to be for the Cincinnati Comic Expo. It's normally in a much bigger space and everything else, but I think the Sharonville Convention Center fit it very well. It was very easy to get in and out of. We talked to some of the artists and guests there about the ease of getting in and out, and they said it was so much easier to get in and out of there from the Duke Energy Convention Center. So it seemed like it was a pretty decent move. I mean, they had to do it, but it was a pretty decent move for them. I'm curious, when those refurbishments are done, what decision they're going to make on where the con's going to be, or the expo is going to be from here.
Yeah, and before we dive into really our experience with it, we want to give a special thanks to the people running the Cincy Comic Expo for giving us press access to allow us to come in, take in everything that we saw. We got to meet and interact with so many amazing people, got to network for our show as well, plugging the podcast all weekend, had a great time meeting people out and about, including vendors. We'll get into a lot of the, celebrity conversations that we did get to have, some of the panels we got to sit on, but at the very least, special thanks to everybody running the Cincy Comic Expo for allowing us to come in and kind of do this episode. We're big fans of conventions as is, and yeah, I think they did a really good job, because we've attended Cincy Comic Expo in the past as fans in the Duke Energy Convention Center, and it is a significantly larger space, so you can have more vendors. It's a little more spread out, I would say, but here they did a fine job, even though a lot of stuff was compacted together and may not have been as room for as many vendors. I think they did a good job in, keeping things separate. So if you think about the lay of the land as far as the expo goes, you have your main, I want to say, artist and, vendor alley, which is all the, commissioned artists within like a room and another room for some of the bigger content, creators like, Kevin Eastman was in the bigger room by him, not by himself, but with more like of
or the bigger artists,
more of the bigger artists
and
of the area for sure. And, the bigger room was reserved for more vendors of, comic book shops and collectors and people with a bunch of cool stuff for sale. Like one of my favorite things just kind of getting into that area was the blade section, where the people were selling these like all kinds of different blades that you could think of from anime. I saw more keyblades from Kingdom Hearts than I could possibly think I could ever see.
They had two. One was on each end of the hall there, which was nice for them.
Yeah, they had a lot of space out there, but there was a lot of really cool stuff. I know we really enjoyed getting to interact with some of the artists in particular. A shout out to our friend Steve, who we'll mention again by the end, who did some really amazing drawings of Ninja Turtles that I bought for my own personal collection to hang up in my music room. But yeah, there were so many amazing things for sale, and just seeing a lot of people out and about and enjoying themselves and having a good time. I think they did a really good job of moving it out here and having everything laid out in a way that made a lot of sense.
Yeah, because again, when it came to the celebrities, the more movie stars and TV stars and stuff, they had their own room, which is well spaced out, and it was kind of easy to be able to find who you were looking for. Like they did some moving around because you had some guests that had to leave early, like Lenore's on. She flew in from filming a show, had to take 3 flights to get here, did a day and a half, and then flew right back out. Like she's a trooper. She was a sweetheart. Like she was an absolute great person. If you don't know her name, she's a voice of Rogue from the X-Men animated series, X-Men 97. She was also a politician, done a whole lot of stuff. But she was just an absolute sweetheart. It got, a Funko Pop signed by her, and got a Rogue voice Sugar from her, which was just, all right, awesome. I'm back to being a little kid and just fanboying out because I got that from her in person. But it was well laid out for everything. Like there was the Horror Hound I went to last was right before on The Walking Dead, where Merle had passed away, which has been quite a while. And it was really hard to get around. Like the hallways and stuff just felt so stuffed and you couldn't get through. But here with the Sharonville Convention Center, with the expo, we didn't have that much problem getting around, even with a lot of people in costumes and big costumes around and stuff. Yeah. It wasn't that difficult to get around. So I think they did a good job with setting up here for the first year. And yeah, I'll give big props to him, because running a show like this is not easy. There's so many moving parts between press, between exhibitors, guests, and just photo ops and panels and just everything. And everything kind of went pretty smoothly from what we could see. So just a big prop to them. We loved attending and covering it this year. We hope to go back and, do it next year. But it was a lot of fun. It was different going up to Sharonville to do it, but it ended up being a pretty good time.
Yeah, we had a blast. We really did. And like you said, kudos to the people running it to make it seem as smooth as absolutely possible. One of my favorite things to do as a human being is people watch, and just seeing everybody in their costumes. There were some really well done, elaborate costumes that people put in a lot of time for. Just some ones I could think of off the top of my head. There was a guy that we saw today, even as we're filming this on Sunday, as the convention is ending, dressed in a really elaborate Joker costume. Like, he looked amazing. There were some really well done Mandalorian costumes, obviously, with the Mandalorian cast being here. A ton of them. And even we'll get to that when we get to their panel. But it was just so cool to see everybody just embracing it. Cosplaying is a lot of fun, and seeing people, go to the nth degree to look as amazing as they do and be in the characters that they're in. You see all these people meeting up and taking photos, and, it's really fun, and it's a really interesting people watch. If you're into people watching, there's plenty of that to go around for these types of conventions. And it was a lot of fun seeing the care that people, put into making these costumes look as good as they do, and it was just incredible to see.
It was really good to see with the crowd and the fans and the guests, pretty much everybody that we talked to, and we sat and talked to a lot of people, and we were able to, like you said, network and talk about our podcast. We ran into some other podcasters with the Time Shifters podcast and was able to talk to them and talk to, like, everyone's nice and cordial. Even walking around there, it was calm. Like, It was a ton of people, but it was nice and calm, and it was just kind of a great time to go around. So I'm really looking forward to having that expo be there again next year. And like I said, we'll see. Like I said, the Duke Energy Convention gives them a whole lot more room where they can have more celebrity guests and they can have more vendors and panels and everything else. But it was kind of nice having the more quaint expo at the convention center there in Sharonville.
Absolutely. And if you've never been to a convention like this before and you're kind of on the fence to going, I recommend going. Even if you just go and get like a day pass and go on like a Saturday or Sunday, I can't recommend it enough. One thing to know before you go to these types of things, though, of course, is most of the vendors accept cash. Most of the people, if you're interested in having interactions with the celebrity guests as well, most of them are cash only. So you do want to bring a healthy amount of cash. It's not inexpensive. I'm not going to lie and say it's not the most affordable thing to meet certain people. It can cost upwards of, $60 to $100 just to get photos or autographs or things of that nature. But for the most part, I would say the celebrity interactions that we were able to be a part of, you get your bang for your buck. Like you get, some real personal interactions. And I don't know if you want to just go into our celebrity interactions or did you want to jump into the panels first? Because we have time to talk about both.
We'll probably kind of mix those in because some of the panels that we went to and everything and interacted there. We talked to some of them afterwards and everything else. We'll probably kind of mix it in between here because, so the very first panel that we attended as press, which is kind of nice to go up and say, hey, I'm a limo driver. That's kind of what was always going in my head that we joked about from Dumb and Dumbers. That it's okay. I'm a limo driver. And I'm like, hey, we're here. We're here. We're going to go in, we're going to sit, and we're going to do this panel here.
It was a lot of fun.
But you had Ming-Na Wen was the first one up, so she is known for Agent May and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. She is Fennec Shand in The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett. She was also the voice of Mulan in the animated Mulan. She's been so many different credits, a very big star and stuff. And it was very funny to see her come on stage because she had taken the red eye to get there, and she just walked onto the stage and laid down on the couch.
It was hilarious because she laid down and she was just like, we're going to do this entire panel like this. Just go ahead and ask your questions. I'm going to get real comfortable. Just really funny, really personable. She gave a lot of these panels, if you've never had the opportunity to sit in on one, they can be a lot of fun because you get a little bit of banter between the host and, the star in this case. And in a lot of these cases, they let fans come up to a microphone and ask questions. And, a lot of people were asking about, her experiences with Star Wars, her experiences, on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. A couple people asked about Mulan. Like she gives like really pointed answers and, got to dive into, quite a few things. And, one of the fun things that they get to talk about is like getting asked about the difference between doing film and doing TV. Which do you prefer? And she kind of went into this fun story and anecdote about, filming, movies. You get weeks at a time to, weeks and days at a time to film these things. But in TV, a lot of times you only get a matter of hours.
So you got 5 hours
to shoot your scene. Which is insane comparing one to the other. But she talks about, there's good pros and cons to both, depending on what you like to do. And she was just really charming and a lot of fun.
Yeah, she was very appreciative of being there and stuff. I was able to ask her about the live action Mulan and, the feedback and everything that, she's had on it, and she said she was a little disappointed just in how fans kind of had a reaction to it because it was missing Mushu, and it was missing this and that, and it added this, and it changed that, and she was like, if they really gave it a chance, I think they would like it. She loved it, and, my girls loved it, and we've enjoyed the film. I enjoyed the film overall. It was definitely a different interpretation, but it was interesting to talk to her about that and see how she really felt about it, because, she did the animated movie and is really known for it. She also had a little cameo in the live action, but it is one of those films that maybe have gotten a little too much backlash on what it was. Like, it wasn't perfect. It did change a lot of stuff, but it did a decent job of doing a different interpretation, because a lot of the live actions that they've done have been pretty close to, not exactly one-to-one, but it's stuck to it pretty well, and this was a first one that really tried to expand and go a little bit different with what it was trying to do. But it was interesting to talk with her and get that take on what she felt about Mulan, and that she did enjoy it herself.
Absolutely. And then she had quite a few questions asked to her. They gave a lot of time to the Q&A portion, which I really appreciated. One of the things that really impressed me was somebody asked her about doing stunts as like Agent May and how much she enjoyed playing that character. And she said she did up to 80% of her own stunts on the show, which is impressive because if you know anything about that show, she fights a lot. Like she's an amazing, unbelievable, just amazing character who, gets in a lot of fights and mixes it up, and just, knowing that she did 80% of her own stunts is really impressive.
And I think she said her stunt double was also named Ming. So she said, like Dr. Seuss, we were Ming 1 and Ming 2.
I love that.
And which was really fun. But yeah, I mean, she's known for doing a lot of action. She said she would still love to do even more action, but also talked about, of course, the questions are going to come up because, we've had a little bit of a lull with The Mandalorian. We're waiting for The Mandalorian and Grogu to come out next year and stuff. And she was asked about the MCU and the multiverse and everything. And she did, with both of them, said, I would love to come back as Fennec. I love my time. I'm a Star Wars geek and everything else, and that she absolutely loved doing it. And she even, Joe, hey, let's get a spinoff show going and stuff for it too. And even said when it came to the MCU and the multiverse and everything else, she would absolutely love to come back as May and, bring her back around in the multiverse.
Yeah, she was really charming and a lot of fun to talk to. And, the panel went really well. It was a really great kickoff to, our panel experience there on Saturday. She was one of the first ones on Saturday. And I want to move into the next panel that we got to watch immediately after was Ron Pearlman. And Ron Pearlman is absolutely fantastic. You know what you're getting with Ron Pearlman. Ron Pearlman's got this edge to him. He came in and was completely I don't want to say unhinged completely, but because unhinged could be I meant unhinged in a very good, funny, charming way. Just absolutely amazing panel with him. It was so much fun.
He right away saw a little girl in the back of the room, and he's like, did someone bring a child here? Like, oh, you're going to hear some stuff, but you're going to hear from somewhere. Might as well be from Uncle Ron.
Yeah, he's just so
he just started it right off. Yeah. His conversation we even got a little bit of emotional because he was talking about kind of really what motivates him to keep going and acting at his age and everything else. And even said that, he enjoys acting now probably more than he ever has because of the experiences and the growth and everything he's had. He's able to appreciate everything he's done and doing, and even said, he loves acting for the art of storytelling, to be able to tell these good, deep, complex stories and everything. That's what keeps him going with it. Just the love of acting, the love of the complex stories and everything else. But it was really fun to get that back and forth of his humor and lightness and stuff, but also touching on some more kind of serious subjects towards the end. There was a question that was asked to him, and it got him choked up a little bit. Yeah,
it was fun to see in that full range of emotion from Ron, because Ron, he has a little bit of a reputation for being a gruff kind of person if you meet him out. But he's also very kind when it comes to his personal interactions with people. He even openly talked about, he's like, look, I absolutely love people. He said, I may not love them 24 hours of the day, but I love meeting people. I love interacting with people. And he got to tell some really funny stories. And one of the stories that he got to tell that had me laughing the hardest probably was his experience on Hellboy. And a guy asked him what his favorite type of cookie was. And he said he loved, chocolate chip cookies among anything fresh, fresh baked chocolate chip cookies. But he talked about his experience eating cookies on the Hellboy set. And he was like, most actors, when you do a food take, you tend to just chew it. And then once the camera cuts, you spit the food out. He said he ate 56 cookies filming.
And so that was back in 2006, and he's still paying for it.
Yeah. It was so funny to listen to him tell that story. It was hilarious. But he was like, nope, I enjoyed every one of those cookies and had a good time with it. And he just the absolute best. He was so funny, and got to talk about all the different types of roles he's done in his career. He talked some about Sons of Anarchy, obviously, a lot about Hellboy, but just so much fun to sit there. I could listen to Ron Perlman talk for hours at a time, just hearing some of the stories, the experiences, especially how much he loved working with Guillermo del Toro on Hellboy. And he really talked about why he didn't make the third one. He wouldn't do another one if Guillermo wasn't involved with it, because they wanted to do a trilogy, and it's just hasn't gotten made. And he still kind of left the door open, like, hey, if Guillermo ever wanted to come back to this and do this, I would do it. It was really cool to hear him have that, conversation.
Yeah, he said if Guillermo wanted to come back and finish the trilogy, he wouldn't show up for anything else but finishing the trilogy that they started. And he gave us a little insight on kind of what we might have been looking at, because it was going to involve the twins and still his struggle about being, the one who's supposed to kind of destroy things, but he's trying to save it, and kind of went a little bit, which was really cool. And then with Sons of Anarchy, he was talking about how that was one of his hardest roles he ever did. He kind of feared the role because it was a difficult one for him to do, which was interesting to see out of all the prosthetics with Beauty and the Beast and Hellboy and other stuff that can take a lot out a lot out of you, because especially with Hellboy, he was in his 50s when he started that and everything. But he said, Clay was one of the hardest characters he's done, because it took a lot more of him to be able to do that character, which was really interesting to hear that from him. But one of my favorite stories was, in the clip has kind of been going around here more recently, was with Sigourney Weaver. So in Alien Resurrection, there was the basketball scene where she dribbles a little bit and she throws a ball behind her back and makes a shot. And someone asked him about it, and he was like, like she had practiced that for like 2 weeks and she had not made a single shot. And so they got on set, very first take, dribbled, shot, nothing but net. And he's like, I screwed it up, because I'm in the background just screaming and yelling, and you can hear me walk away saying he used some more colorful language, and I screwed this up and walked away. But he said, well, they were able to kind of cut around and use what they had. But like she practiced it for weeks, never made it, and the very first take was nothing but net. Because that's an infamous scene from that, even though Resurrection isn't talked about that well with a lot of Alien fans and stuff. But that was kind of interesting to see him still kind of fanboying over that moment with Sigourney.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Ron is the absolute best. He is so fun to talk to, and he's got stories for days. If you ever get a chance to sit in on a panel with Ron Pearlman, cannot recommend it enough. It was a ton of fun, and it'll bring us to our next panel, which was I believe the last panel we went to on Saturday, which was the Mandalorian panel. So it had Emily Swallow, Katee Sackhoff, and Simon Kassianides, who, this was a lot of fun. This was a ton of fun. And obviously they got to talk about their experiences with the Mandalorian. Obviously Katee is a big star in the sci-fi world, also from her time on Battlestar Galactica. She was amazing in 24 as well. Emily Swallow, most known for Mandalorian, but has appeared as, bit characters in a lot of CBS properties as well. So you've seen her in a lot of stuff outside of the Mandalorian, where she's, completely armored and you just hear, her voice. But I got to tell you, we met Emily Swallow outside of the panel. One of the nicest human beings you'll meet. She is so funny and incredibly charming, but this panel was a lot of fun.
Yeah, Emily was very bright and bubbly and moving around, which she even talked about on the panel, because, the Armorer is a very much more subdued performance, very light talking, doesn't move around enough. So she talked about kind of her struggles, because she does move around a lot and silly and everything else. So it was interesting for her to be able to calm herself and take herself down to be able to do that performance. And I did love how she talked about when her and Katee finally found out that they were going to do a scene together, that they came up with all these ideas, like backstories and, what Bo-Katan and the Armor, what they know about each other and their history together, and had all these ideas, and they sent it off to Dave Filoni, and he's just like, no.
Yeah, we're not doing any of that. I love it. They talk about how much time and effort they put into all of it just for Dave Filoni to shoot it down, which is hilarious. But yeah, this one was a lot of fun. I actually got to ask a question during this panel in this Q&A, and I brought up the question. Actors love to talk about how much fun it is to play a villain, and my question was, why is it so hard to be a hero? And Emily gave this really poignant response, like, it's so hard that a lot of times heroes are not believable in the way they're presented, which makes a lot of sense, because you think about these insane heroic stories where they have to overcome all of these obstacles and they don't always make sense, and they're not like from a logical perspective and things like that. But she gave a really pointed, poignant response, and like kind of went into detail about, heroes can be fun when they're presented in a certain way, but they are very difficult to make believable, which is very true, because when you're a villain, even with villains and their actions, a lot of times they're justified. They're justifying their actions. They're justified in why they feel the way they feel.
Yeah, that's what Simon
from their perspective. Yeah, and it was a really good response that they actually answered for a lot longer than I thought they would. They answered for probably a good 5 minutes on the subject, which was incredible for them to do.
Yeah, Simon was talking about that the villains don't really see that they're a villain. They see that there's justification in what they do. But he did say villains are a bit more fun to play, because you just get to feed off that energy and all the bad and everything else. That they are a bit more fun to play, because the heroes, they have their rules and they have all this stuff they have to do. But yeah, Yeah, that was really fun to hear from them. And, they also discussed about their kind of favorite scenes that they filmed and stuff. And they went off on this kind of wild tangent of, it wasn't exactly their favorite, but it was the most memorable for them because in the last season, The Mandalorian, they're, got all the Mandalorians are coming together and they're trying to figure out, are they going to go after Mandalore? So, and they said they filmed this scene that took place at night. It was like 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning. They're all kind of delirious from being tired. They've been up doing it for a while. And they're like, it was kind of a crazy scene because there's like a music battle going on. Like there's drums from this group of Mandalorians and there's other instruments from this other group. And like Bo-Katan has this big elaborate speech that she's giving about, how this isn't their home and they need to retake Mandalore and you can stay here and do what you want, but I'm going to go back to our homeworld and stuff. And she says, I had this just gigantic speech and they use absolutely none of it.
Yep.
But one of the most hilarious moments was Katee, as Simon brought up, with all the music going on, you look over and there's Grogu dancing, and Katee got up and gave us a performance of that dance.
It was so funny because she's losing it because she's like, oh my God, I forgot that they were making Grogu dance in that scene because, like I said, everybody's delirious and shooting the scene. And she gets up and gives this really animated, like, way they presented Grogu, like, dancing, like, in this scene just sounded completely absurd. And she mentioned that, a scene like that where she really got to see Simon coming out of his shell a little bit, and it kind of made her realize, they kind of brought them closer together as friends. She was just like, they actually had a did we just become best friends moment, and it was a really, charming and heartwarming conversation talking about how they got as close as they did and, really enjoyed their experience working together. And you can feel that when those three get together because it's a lot of fun. If you see any of their social media posts over the weekend, they're posting a lot of stuff together and, just being goofy and silly and having a lot of fun. But this panel was a joy as well to sit through because, it was super entertaining. The questions from a lot of the fans were really good. There wasn't any, I wouldn't say there weren't any bad questions. A lot of people talking about, how these shows meant a lot to them and, thanking them for being here and everybody being, on the other side, the celebrities being incredibly gracious, showing that they really do care about, the perceptions of their characters and they care about people caring about the show. And it was a really good, interactive experience that we all got to be a part of.
Yeah, and they did talk a little bit about kind of the struggles, especially with Katee Sackhoff, about the struggles of bringing Bo-Katan from the animation world to live action and being able to play both and stuff, because she says she came into it very confident because, I've been voicing her, I know everything about her, but she said, I stepped on set and put on the arm, like, I don't know how she moves. Yeah. I don't know how she does this stuff. And was talking about she's kind of like Emily, that she's very animated in her face and she's a lot of movement stuff. So she had to kind of change, which she also jokingly brought up. She absolutely loved when she filmed in the helmet because she didn't have to worry about her face. She's thinking about what's for dinner. She's like able to just kind of go back and be herself a little bit while she's under the helmet because, Bo-Katan is a very serious, straightforward, and even said like she fell into it a little bit because when they came out on the panel, they had it full of Mandalorians that have been dressed up and they're all posing with their arms crossed and everything. And she's like, I just fell into Bo a little bit. Like, I'm just stoic face and I'm just like that. But yeah, she talked about it was kind of difficult because I hadn't thought about how she holds her body, how she holds herself, how she moves around, how her face will look when she's doing stuff. Like, there was a lot that she thought she knew everything about the character, but she just, I don't know how she exists now. And that was really a cool moment just to see, like, she had a little bit of a freak out. Like, I didn't really know. And there was also a fun discussion about how they weren't exactly sure always how their characters were being portrayed because Jon Favreau would kind of tell Katee and others that just kind of be loose with it. So they would do a bunch of different takes that maybe a little bit more serious or done this way or that. So Emily said after, certain episodes where it looked like maybe the armor was a spy, like people were coming up to her at cons and looking at her shiftily like, what did I do? Like, what's going on here? She's trying to figure out because it's like that. Like, they were doing so many different takes. They weren't sure exactly what was coming out. And so a lot of people were taking what was used like, oh, wait, am I turning into a villain? Are they looking at me that way? And they were kind of taken aback by that because it was just because of how they filmed. They weren't exactly sure how their characters were going to be portrayed and looked at in the final cut.
Yeah, and it's a fun insight into like how shooting a show like that works and how you film so many things and you don't know everything that's going to get put in. Like, I think it's a really good reminder of people who watch these types of shows that a lot of times even the actors making them don't necessarily know how all the story is going to fit together even as they're filming it. Like, because you get a bit of an outline, but you don't know what they're going to use and what they're not going to use. So a lot of times it's hard for them to really speak to something until they see the product like we do. We're like, oh, okay, they use that and kind of make that, and that makes sense in how they put it together. So it was a really fun insight into how shooting a show like that works, because even in the end, it was kind of a common theme when we get to some of the other panels that we're going to talk about, like especially with the voice actors, like they're finding out about a lot of the show that they're on by watching it as fans, like we all were, and it was a really cool moment for them.
And it was really nice afterwards. We were able to go and talk with Katee a little bit, and she was so nice and warm and inviting and stuff, and talked to her for a good while about, she just had a baby and about how it's been with her little one and stuff, and about her podcast and how that's going, because I just finished watching the Paul Hyung Sun Lee episode where he's one guy I want to talk to, because he's just looks, he's a big geek, he's a big collector and stuff, but he was very genuine and honest and open and talking about, and as we talked with Katee, just about kind of how hard it is in Hollywood right now, where people are struggling. We got into talking to AI and stuff with Katee about just how Hollywood is being shaped and taken over and changed by how AI is doing. So we had some really good conversations with her.
Yeah, she was really nice and really giving of her time. We fortunately got to talk to her at a point where she had a little bit of a break in her line, and we kind of took advantage of that and went up and talked to her. And she couldn't have been nicer, couldn't have been more personable in talking to us. Like it was really sweet to get that perspective from her, and somebody that we, admire as a performer and a lot of the stuff that she did. And one of the really cool moments is like towards the end of our interaction, whether you were able to, do kind of like a card swap, because we had business cards with our podcast on it, and we've been networking a lot, and, kind of we're talking to her about our show, and, you gave her the card, and she actually said, we'll bring the popcorn. That is an excellent name for a show. So we've got the endorsement of Bo-Katan, the future leader of Mandalore, but she really enjoyed the name of the podcast, and that was a really cool moment for sure.
I held it together until I turned away from her, started walking away, and I'm just kind of like, hey, Bo-Katan said our name is really great, and like, all right, we get a really great name for a podcast, and
that's how you know we're on the right track, man. That was really cool.
That was really cool. She, like I said, she was sweet as could be and very awesome to talk to. And just to have her say that was really amazing to have that interaction and stuff. And like, they were just so gracious to everybody who came up to them. There's no one who was really, because sometimes you can get, I think it's more musicians I've had some kind of bad interactions with, and there were some, like the Sick Puppies, they were in the middle of the band kind of breaking up with their lead singer and stuff, and it was a really rough interaction I had with them. But, here, like, all the interactions were so good, and they were just so great to be able to talk openly with everybody, and it was a lot of fun to do that. And like, one of the highlights of the weekend too was we had 2 different panels, and we had a good chunk of the X-Men the Animated original cast along with some of the cast from X-Men 97, and got to sit on panels and kind of talk with them a little bit as well.
Yeah, it was really fun kind of rehashing that. Obviously, go back into our archives and check our watch-along that we did, an episodic watch-along for X-Men 97, and our thoughts on that. Absolutely brilliant series. As people who grew up loving, X-Men, I know, speaking for both of us, really helped get us into, and the Expo shirt
X-Men shirt I had to get.
It's a fantastic shirt, but X-Men, the animated series, along with Batman, the animated series, really for us as kids, kind of helped launch our love of comic books and comic book properties. I'd say between those two and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Spider-Man are probably like the 4 pillars of my comic book fandom, growing up, and getting to see these incredible voice actors on this panel who, were so instrumental in, some of our favorite series. Like, this was the panel I was most looking forward to the entire weekend, only because of the impact that it had on me. And it really didn't disappoint, because, they did one for X-Men, the animated series, and then one for X-Men 97. It was kind of a similar panel where they told similar stories, but you get their, backstory into how it was, recording the episodes then versus recording the episodes now, and how some of them, several of them were able to reprise their roles in the X-Men 97 series, and some of them are kind of getting into it, for the first time. We had the guy who plays Magneto on the panel in this one, who obviously they couldn't get the original voice actor for because he unfortunately passed in 2020. But the new guy came in, Matthew Watterson, who did a fantastic job as Magneto in this, was super nice and charming and talking, and interacting with the rest of the cast. And you could just feel, by how they talked and how close they all were and how much being on this show meant to all of them working together. And you could just see that camaraderie and that family unit really in these panels. It was really fun to see.
It was also crazy to hear that a lot of them hadn't met each other until they started doing these rounds for conventions, because, they did talk like in the 90s, a lot of them, they were able to do kind of group recordings. So there's 8 or 9 of them standing around doing their talk or doing their recordings and everything. But for especially X-Men 97 started, during the pandemic and everything else that, some of them are LA, a lot of them are in Canada, and that they just weren't able to be around each other, so they did everything on their own. Even it was kind of just strange and crazy how it all filmed, because they told us that you wouldn't get the whole script. You would get just your part, so you really didn't know what was going on outside of kind of your role and what the dialogue and stuff that you had. So it was like, well, we got this, but what else is going on? I got the next script. What happened in that? This is what you get. But it was funny to see, because we had one of the writers and directors of the show there too, and he was like, we sent the whole scripts, so I'm not sure what happened there. And like, well, we didn't get the whole script.
Yeah, I got controlled. It was a really funny interaction. Larry Houston, who is an absolute legend in, the animated world, and did a lot of the amazing writing for X-Men, the animated series, as well as X-Men 97. And just some of the stories that he would share were absolutely incredible. If you ever get a chance to sit on a panel with those guys, I cannot recommend it enough. But yeah, it was fun seeing like some of them who had no past history with, some of them with even voice acting or had no comic book knowledge, versus, the gentleman George who does the voice of Beast was a big comic book nerd and X-Men fan. And he gives this really funny story that he told on both panels, where he talked about his audition process for the role of Beast, and it was just entitled Project X. And he makes a joke. He's like, well, you gave me half the title. He was like, but a lot of times when you read that, you don't know what it's for. He said, but I was such a big fan of the X-Men comics. When you get into the dialogue, I know this so well. I'm like, oh, I'm reading for X-Men. This is awesome. This is incredible. So it was really funny to see him like share that joy and that excitement he had for, being a part of the show, because he was such a fan of the source material already that he was able to identify that. And I thought that was a really cool anecdote from him.
Yeah, he even he also gave us a little bit of the Beast voice, which was awesome to hear. But he told us another story, because he was a big comic book fan, that he was a big fan of Superman as well. And I tied like a blanket or a sheet to my neck and I jumped off the roof. And I found out I couldn't fly.
Right.
He said, luckily I landed in a sand pit or something. But yeah, he jumped off his parents' roof because he wanted to be Superman. But he was really great to hear from and everything. But yeah, to hear the stories and the passion that a lot of them had for it. Because yeah, you said a lot of them didn't really know the comics and didn't really know a lot of stuff. And some of them came in confident. Some of them came in a little bit scared because they weren't exactly sure what they, were going to do there. And it was just a lot of fun to hear from them. And especially because of just them showing how much appreciation that they've had for the fans. And, I had for me, a great moment being able to talk to the cast about, I kind of told them that you were the voices of my generation, like from Batman, the animated series with the, departed Kevin Conroy and the entire X-Men animated series. Like, they were the voices of our childhood. Like, for me, those two series is what got me into I wasn't into comics before then. It was Ninja Turtles, X-Men, the animated series, and Batman, the animated series. That got me into comics, and I was able to share that with them, but also kind of shared a great moment with Chris Potter, who was a voice of Gambit. So in X-Men 97, he took on Cable and everything. We also got a little bit of, Gambit from him as well. But awesome. I was able to tell him about, because, my wife and my oldest daughter, Michaela, they're big into Heartland. He's been doing Heartland for 18 years.
Long time.
And they absolutely love the show. And it's a great bonding moment for them. And it was great to have that connection, interaction with him when I'm talking about it. He genuinely felt just really great. Like you said, you don't hear that from the directors and the other people from the episodes and from the shows and everything. everything else. So it's great to hear about those bonds and connections and everything that people have directly from the source. So like it made him feel good because he's like, I grew up on him as Gambit. Gambit is my favorite character along with Rogue. Like Rogue and Gambit from X-Men animated series are still my favorites of all time with everything. And to be able to say that I had that connection with him with Gambit, now my daughter has a connection with them through Heartland, because I was like, I sent her a picture of you and you're like, who is this? He's like, oh, that's Tim from Heartland. I'm like, no, that's Gambit.
Yeah, he had a good laugh about that, and it was really fun. And you guys got to have a really nice interaction, back at his table where he actually did something really cool for your daughter. That was really neat too.
Yeah, he recorded a video for Michaela saying his name and stuff. I showed her before we started recording this, and she was jumping up and down, smiling, grinning into ear. So that was great. And I appreciate him doing that for me. And that was really amazing to have. Like, all of them are so genuine and nice and kind. And, we even got to talk to Alison Sealy-Smith, who is the voice of Storm.
Incredible.
And if you're a fan of X-Men the Animated Series, I mean, there's a lot of legendary voices, especially with Lenore, with Rogue, and everything else, but Storm is just this commanding, powerful voice that she just, when Storm is on screen, she commands the screen. Like, she is a very, and I said this to her and talked to her about it, like, it was so great to see, even looking back in as an adult now, of seeing just how deep and layered and complicated for a 90s animated show that Storm and Rogue were, because they had so many different layers of being these powerful, strong characters, but they had all these underlying issues that they struggled with and they had hard times with. So it was really neat to talk to her about those aspects of this character, but just hearing her voice and hearing Storm, like, you hear that voice of Storm, you know who it is, the one and only voice. I mean, there's been others and other X-Men, animated series and stuff. That is the one and only voice of Storm.
Yeah, we had a really, really nice interaction with her where we got to, heap a whole bunch of praise on her like that. And she was very kind and very personable with the time that we were able to get with her. And, we got to talk to her a little bit about X-Men 97 specifically, with the incredible, story arc that she had and kind of her experience with that as well, because she was kind of learning things along the way. Like we said, she wasn't given all of the information. And then she did mention that, one of the things she really wished that they would have given her, just as a little bit of feedback on that, was how integral, Storm and Rogue's relationship was in X-Men the Animated Series. It didn't get really explored that much in X-Men 97 for just the way they told the story. And she said, I love this story too, and I wish the one thing that would have really put it over the top for me would have been, having that moment with Rogue during that. And she made a really good point at it as well. But just hearing her, light up when we talk about those types of things, especially when you talked about, just how layered the character is, and we weren't really getting that from a whole lot of female characters back in the 90s, and the fact that this was written the way that it was. And that's one of the special things about the X-Men, is there's really kind of a different character for every type of person. It is a very, at times political, but at the same time representative show that kind of they have characters from all different types of walks of life and backgrounds and experiences that really kind of resonates with so many people, and why the X-Men are as popular as they are. And
I'll say she had the best earrings of the expo that we saw, because she had glowing lightning bolts on her for her earrings. Well, the day one was that, the second one was more silver, like shiny ones, but it was great talking to her. And it reminded me again, like we talked briefly about talking with Lenore, but we got to talk to her a little bit about the Remember It episode with Gambit, and told her straight up, like, when that happened, and especially with when Gambit said, and then Rogue, holding him, and can't feel like, I got chills and goosebumps, and talking with Rogue about him, I got goosebumps talking to her about it as well. Like, that was an incredible scene of X-Men 97 that still sticks. And we even got a little hint from the panel and stuff as well, because we had a guy he named his kid Remy and was talking to them all. And they were like, well, if you paid attention and you looked at the very end credits about things, you might want to look forward to season 2 a little bit and see maybe what happened.
A little bit of a tease. It was really cool, and there was just so many fun interactions with that. Lenore was absolutely incredible with her time as well, and very personable, and took a lot of time with not only us, but everybody that she got to interact with while she was there. Really kind, personable person as well. If you get a chance to meet her at a con, cannot recommend it enough.
She was amazing.
Absolutely iconic in the voice role of Rogue, and just that distinct Southern charm, which really isn't that far off from her speaking voice. You can kind of hear it when she talks without, amping up the southern part of her voice. But she's just an incredibly kind person, and everyone that we were fortunate to meet this weekend, we had very similar positive interactions, which kind of put the event overall over the top for us, and then really enhanced our enjoyment in the entire experience. Was just all of the positive interactions that we were able to have, for sure.
Yeah, I'm fanboying in my head still about hearing her say, because I'm going through everything and I'm getting her to sign this for me, and she, what do you want to say? And you want to personalize? You just want to, and she went into the Rogue voice and say sugar, and I'm like, because he was like, you don't hear that too often. We're like, well, we're kind of from Kentucky, a little bit of Southern in us, so we've kind of heard that. But I heard Rogue say sugar to me, and
so cool.
I'm like, all right, keep it together, keep it together, keep it together, keep it together, be professional, really keep it together. Yeah. But that was a lot of fun. Like, she was such a sweetheart, talking about her new show that she's filming and everything with us. That'll be out in 2025, so that want to be really interesting one to look into and see what she's doing. She's done a lot of different live action along with the animated stuff, but it was such great times talking to everybody, because they were so personable, so open to talk and speak about things and giving us their time. And it was really amazing to have those interactions. And, kind of on the final day, we got to interact with a legend for us. And, one of the first comic book properties that really started getting me into the world and got us into the world was Teenage Mutant Turtles, with the late 80s animated series. That was a huge part of our childhood. We got to meet and interact and talk with Kevin Eastman a bit, and he was as kind and cordial and just great, and shaking your hand and talking to you about everything. Like, it was really great meeting a legend that was kind of really down to earth on everything.
Yeah, because you expect somebody of that stature, who's been a legend in the comic book industry for over 40 years now, and is one of the first big comic book properties outside of Superman and even so much Batman, that got a lot of mainstream notoriety for, being able to adapt it into film and TV with the Ninja Turtles. They've been a staple of TV and film for the better part of 3.5 decades now. Like, it's been a long road for the Ninja Turtles in the mainstream, lexicon of things. And to meet him, his line was, and I do not exaggerate when I say this, by far the longest line to meet any particular person this entire weekend.
Every day.
It was absolutely insane. Ming-Na Wen on Saturday was probably the one that was most comparable to it, but Kevin's line was consistently 2 hours long plus to get to meet him. And the amazing thing about that is he takes the time to really have a personal interaction with you when you get to meet him, because we got there super early today, so the experience is still fresh in my head from today. But we got there extra early, we got in line, and it still took us over an hour, almost an hour and a half, to get through the line to meet him, because he takes his time with everybody. And really, of all the people we got to interact with, he was one of the most affordable people to meet, which is insane, because you'd figure he'd be among the most.
Absolutely, he was one of the lowest.
Yeah, you'd figure he'd be one of the most expensive. And you get the opportunity to, obviously with these people, you can take photos with them for a price. Obviously, nothing's free. But to get something personalized.
Unless you photobomb.
Yeah, unless you photobomb in my photo with Kevin Eastman like he did, which is really funny. But, you could get things personalized and signed. There was a special comic variant that we were getting for the convention that I had both him and the other artist that helped design the cover of the comic book and was involved with that as well. Got them both to sign it, got it authenticated. That was really cool, and I'm adding that to my personal collection. But he even personalized it and wrote Cowabunga on it for me and drew a little sketch of a turtle while he also signed his name, and I got a print, personalized by him as well. But he took the time to really talk to people, and I got to have a really cool interaction with him where, I kind of, stumbled over my words, which I don't do a lot when I meet people, because I've met my fair share of, relatively famous people from time doing internet radio and meeting musicians. musicians and getting to do interviews with them.
This is Kevin Eastman.
But it's Kevin Eastman. Like, the Ninja Turtles were such a huge part of my childhood, and I got to share that story with him. Like, I went as a Ninja Turtle for Halloween several years in a row as a kid because I was that obsessed with the Ninja Turtles. Like, I love that property, and get to meet the man who is 50% responsible for the creation of this property that, you know, I've loved pretty much my entire life. And getting to tell that story and getting to have that interaction with him and having him genuinely be like, you know, I appreciate everybody who's allowed me to have this incredible life doing something that I love doing. And, you know, you feel that genuine appreciation that he has, and he gets up and he, you know, puts his arm around you, and he's like, you know, making sure you're good with the photo that you take with him because he wants it to be, you know, worth your time and your money. And just that interaction with him is something that will stay with me forever.
Yeah, even his staff, like we were talking to, he had, 4 or 5 people there, you know, helping with everything. And they were awesome to talk with as well. They were all cordial, talking to everybody about everything. Like the whole experience of just being able to go through and meet him and talk to him. I was able to talk to him about introducing my girls. You know, I don't have boys, but introduce my girls to Teenage Mutant Turtles with my oldest is, you know, into the Turtles and everything else with me. And my youngest, not so much. She enjoys the Turtles, but, you know, especially with getting my oldest into the original, you know, Teenage Mutant Turtles was awesome. Be able to talk to him about that and just about everything. And it was great going into his panel and stuff as well, and to get to hear him speak, because there was some stuff he revealed that I didn't really know.
Sure.
Like, kind of one of the biggest ones I want to go ahead and jump into was, you know, he talked about the Last Ronin and where that came to, and if he was, you know, did you know it was going to be who it was? It was Michelangelo. Did you know it was going to be him? And he said, yeah, we started developing that in 1987.
Yeah.
Like, they started that way back in the beginning. Like, that was an idea him and Peter Laird came up with for The Last Ronin, and it was Michelangelo from the get-go. So from 87 to, you know, when it started in 2022, 23, somewhere in there when the first issue started coming out, that they knew right away what it was going to be, because he had the biggest journey to go on, because he was the, you know, sillier, more immature brother. So it made the most sense that he needed to go. He had the most to go and most to lose when it came to losing his brothers and losing everybody to bring him into this, like, vengeful guy and stuff. But it was kind of really amazing to hear that they had started that long ago, and they looked at different iterations of doing it earlier, but it wasn't until they got around episode 100 that they brought it, you know, Kevin brought it back out, and like, all right, I think it's finally time after 20 plus years to finally go into The Last Ronin.
Yeah, it was really cool to hear him tell that story, and he had several funny anecdotes and several great stories about, you know, like making he called them happy accidents. There were a lot of happy accidents that kind of led him to the point where he even was able to be successful in selling the comics from the original, to telling a really funny story about how they messed up the printing of the original run of the first comics to where they were larger than, you know, the traditional comics that everybody had kind of had a standard for printing on, to where they couldn't really store them normally on the shelves, and they have to sell them at the display case right by the register, which is brilliant marketing, by the way. It's like right in front of your face as you go to check out. Oh, what's this? Let me buy it. But it was like the happy accident that kind of led them to selling out all the copies of the original. And he said it took them like five issues before they finally started printing them on normal comic papers. But it was a really funny story to have him tell that. But, you know, he kind of gave, like, one of the questions I got asked that I think he did a really good job of explaining is the thought process behind the weapons each of the Ninja Turtles have. So, you know, Leonardo with the swords, Donatello with the bow staff, Raph with the sais, and then, you know, Michelangelo with the nunchucks. And there was thought process behind each and every, you know, weapon that each had that was kind of best suited to the personality that they had. And it was a really fun, you know, retelling of the thought process that went into that, and just so many cool little, like, anecdotes of, like, his time as, you know, creative director, and like a lot of the input he has on, like, the films and, you know, the animated series and stuff that, you know, he's still been able to have influence on even to this day. That it was really fun to listen to all the wonderful stories that he had to tell us in the limited time that we got, because the panels were only an hour, so. Yeah. Like, he got through a lot of information very quickly in this.
Yeah, I love what he admitted with Raph, that, you know, he was kind of inspired by Wolverine for him. So, like, his sais, you know, 3-prong sais were based around Wolverine because he is an angry character and everything else. So he's got his size that can be a little more damaging and hurtful and stuff. And, Michelangelo is like, well, nunchucks seem like kind of the silliest weapon. Like who, even with Bruce Lee and other people who use them so expertly and stuff, like how many people would try to whip around a nunchuck and hit themselves in the head and do stuff like that, that it seemed like something that's very difficult to master and that you can screw up a lot with using. That kind of fit the over-the-top kind of personality of Michelangelo. But it was fun to hear those deep anecdotes and why they went, and like everything was well thought out. Even like someone asked him, is there stuff that you all came up with and didn't use that you maybe want to use? And no, we were very lucky with the control that we had and everything that went on with the Turtles, that we were able to put out what we wanted to put out and stuff. And probably one of my favorite moments of the panel was him speaking on the live action films, because he's actually a fan of Turtles in Time, the third film. He said, I actually really enjoyed that one. But, he was asked kind of what his favorite was. And he went on a little bit talking about how he kind of really loved with the animated series to be able to take the darker comic at the time and make it lighter for kids and stuff, to give that different experience of, well, you've got the darker, more mature comic, and let's do something fun and silly and over the top. But said that the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie was the closest to his vision and what they thought the Turtles was, because it had the darkness and it had the family aspects and it had the light laughter and the action, everything. So like he still really loves that first film because it really just embodied what he was doing with the Turtles.
And he gave a fun anecdote about like how miserable the actors were in the costumes, but they were still able to pull off all this stuff despite them being 80-pound suits. And he made a funny joke about the guy who played, I want to say Donatello, who was maybe, he said on a good day, 110 pounds soaking wet, trying to do, flying kicks.
There's what Ernie Reyes, who was Kino.
And like just doing flying kicks in an 80-pound suit, being incredibly small himself. It was really funny to hear, but his love for that first film was really interesting to hear, like him kind of wax poetic. It was really funny to hear him say that Turtles in Time was one of his, like, how much he actually enjoyed that one too. Because if you've seen that, I kind of don't agree with that. But hey, who am I to argue with the man who co-created the entire thing? But yeah, it was really cool interaction that people got to have with him, and that personal interaction that we had outside of his panel at his table was incredible as well. And just, if you ever get the chance to go to a convention and meet Kevin Eastman, if you're a fan of the Ninja Turtles, it is an A++ experience that I cannot recommend it enough, because he's incredibly kind, incredibly humble, and just a regular guy. Like he really comes across like a regular guy that just got really lucky to create something incredible. But before we kind of end it with him, I really wanted to talk about just one of the last things that he talked about, and I believe it was the last question that he was asked, where they were asked, how the Turtles have been able to hold up through so many different generations, with adults loving them and kids like keep coming back to it. And he tells this wonderful story about, his thought process behind creating them, where they were green. They weren't really beholden to any like race or credence, but they're all written in different ways to where anybody and everybody can relate to one of them, right? So they have personalities that no matter what background you have, where you've been in your life, what you've gone through, where you come from, whatever circumstance you have, whether it's ethnicity, race, cultural backgrounds and what have you, that you can resonate with one of these characters, and they've always been written that way. And it was a really powerful message that he got across, and it was really beautifully told, that it's something that everybody can relate to, and it's for everyone. And I think that's something that a lot of people have really enjoyed about them, that people keep coming back and falling in love with them. Like you mentioned, bonding with your daughter over it, and I love hearing those stories about like us, our generation growing up as kids and loving them, and now you're having kids, and our generation is raising the next generation of turtle lovers, and it's just as popular now as it was back then, maybe even more so.
Yeah, just how strong it stayed since it came out. Like it's something that really hasn't diminished in popularity. Like everything has its peaks and valleys, and there's times that maybe this series was not as well done, or the newer CGI turtle movies, while they made some money, wasn't well received. But I mean, it's still going so strong after all this time. Like Mutant Mayhem did very well, and it's got a series now, and we've gotten more video. We got the Last Ronin live action film is happening. Got a live a video game coming out of the Last Ronin. Like, it's still going so strong after all this time, and it was really great to hear from him and get some behind the scenes stories. Even had his wife there and was laughing and sharing some stories with her, because she's heard these stories so many times, she can probably tell it better than I can right now. And like, it was just really great to see the human side of people. That's where these expos and everything really shine and do great, is being able to see the human behind the character, behind the actor, behind the artist and writer. And you're thinking of some of these people like Kevin Eastman being bigger than life, but he was just a normal guy, just really easy to talk to and everything else. Like, it was just really great to see the personal side of all these people that we've grown up with, and we've had, heard Rogue so much through X-Men 97 and X-Men the animated series, and be able to talk with her and just be as sweet and kind after all these years about it all. Like, it's just a great experience to be able to meet some of your heroes and meet some people you've idolized for a while, and they all turn out to be great. And it was just a lot of fun. It was, like we said, it was put on really well by everyone. I mean, they've been doing this for a while, but it can be a big thing to change a venue, because there's a lot to coordinate. You've got new people to coordinate with, and like, they did an excellent job of putting the show on this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Once again, we can't thank Cincy Comic Expo enough for having us out as, press guests and giving us the opportunity to go and experience this, and you'll be able to cover it and being able to do a special episode on it like we have. We had an absolutely amazing time. It was a ton of fun. If you get the chance to go, it's going to be back at the Sharonville Convention Center in Cincinnati. If you're in the area and you want to go and you're on the fence, we cannot recommend it enough. We give it a absolute recommendation from us. If you have something similar in your own area, pay attention and look them up and see who all is going to be there, because you never know. It could be somebody from your something that you grew up loving as well, or these people could come and be a part of that convention as well. And if you get the chance to have that experience, like, take the time to do it. If you're really into this content like we are, it met and exceeded every single expectation that I had going into it. It was a really, really well done, smoothly run convention that, I'll have memories and things with me that I'll take from it that'll, last me as long as I'm here,
Yeah, I still kick myself because several years ago, before he passed, Stan Lee came to the Cincinnati Comic Expo when he was at the Duke Energy Convention Center, and I debated about going to meet him and stuff, because I knew the lines are probably going to be crazy, things like $100 to meet him or something, get like a photo and autograph with him, and like, an absolute legend was there. And I was like, well, I'll try again the next year. And it was like the next year that he had passed away and stuff. I'm like, I should have went and should have did it, so I could have met the man and everything else. But yeah, it was just great to be able to take this in. We were curious about how it was going to be at the Sharonville Convention Center, but I think the space and the crew behind the expo did an excellent job putting on a great show and getting, a good selection of various, because we had Peter Weller, and you had, of course, a lot of the Mandalorian cast, but you had Jason Isaacs there as well. So for the Harry Potter and, of course, everything else he's done. And, you had so many different guests, and it was a good variety for taste and everything, especially with the artist and the artist corners. But there's so much great art and everything else that you could find throughout there. And, we did want to give another little plug for Steve Messenger. So that was an artist there that we were able to talk to. We'll have a link to his site and his information in the description and stuff. But he was a great guy that we were talking to. We spent a good amount of time talking to him. You might also be seeing him coming up on the show sometime soon. So it's going to be a lot of fun to be able to sit down and talk with him a bit more about his art and everything else. He did some incredible turtle art. He also had a lot of horror art, which was really well done, and incredible artist. It was just so much fun to talk with him.
Yeah, like I said, Steve was absolutely amazing to us and kind, and we shared some incredible stories. And like I said, I bought some of his pieces to hang up in my house. Like, I'm super excited about the Ninja Turtle stuff, and we all kind of fanboyed, and he had talked to you about being able to meet Kevin Eastman as well, being a Turtle fan that he is, and getting to show him like one of his art pieces and Kevin's input and things like that he was able to do. Just absolutely nice guy and top notch. We also wanted to shout out to our friends at the Time Shifters podcast as well. We were able to meet those guys while we were in line to go into these panels, and, got to hang out with them and talk to them about their show, what they're doing. Go check them out as well. We'll have a link to their stuff as well. Great, incredible guys. And, if you get a chance to check them out, you'll probably hear us on one of their upcoming episodes that they're doing covering the convention as well. So we were able to talk to them while they were recording some stuff in between panels. And, if you listen to that episode, you'll hear our voices on that as well. So shout out to those guys. Couldn't be nicer. And we were really thankful that we got to meet and network with them a little bit too.
Yeah, it was fun. And we'll see if something in the future that we can work out to have a little collaboration between our two podcasts, because they also talk a lot of film and movies and everything else. So it was a really cool experience to meet those guys. And like we said, we were able to talk to a lot of people outside of that seemed really interested in the podcast. We talked about them, wore a lot of our shirts and stuff there, and we were able to hand out a lot of cards and talk to people about movies, giving out a lot of recommendations for movies and films based on family films or anything else. We talked Alien Romulus with somebody, and a lot of it was a lot of fun that we were able to interact with a lot of people outside of the guests and the artists and everything else, just talking to different people about films and movies as we went around and, get to talk about the podcast. So we appreciate everyone who came up and talked to us and that we interacted with at the expo and stuff, that we appreciate your follows and your likes and subscriptions and everything too, because it really helps us a lot. And it was a lot of great fun to be able to meet them and, kind of just share and talk about the podcast with an entire expo.
Absolutely. It was a lot of fun. We got a lot of people, clicking on the QR codes on our business cards, like as we were talking to them, like, oh, just subscribe. I'm going to go check it out. Like, because we get a lot of questions that we were getting. We're like, okay, what do you all cover? What do you all talk about? And we literally talked, hey, the format of our podcast is we go to the movies every single week, and, we talk about, current films and current TV shows, and we try to stay up to date with everything. And they were like, oh, do you have an episode on this, this, and this? And I'm like, yep, we have an episode on that. Go check it out. Go check out our, our YouTube page, our audio realm. Like, you can listen to us, you can watch us, whatever your preferred method of, ingesting podcasts. That's what we love to hear. We love to interact with people. And it was really fun to get that, real grassroots networking, in-person experience with people that, I think will help elevate the profile of the show a little bit more, and hopefully they tell their friends and continue to, grow the podcast as we're hoping to do. But really thankful for those interactions that we're having. Thank you to everybody who we met and interacted with, all the kindness that you showed to not only us, but that we were able to give some love back to you and support the projects that you're working on as well. So really, really appreciate all the wonderful interactions we were able to have this weekend for sure.
Yeah, so make sure you check the description of the episode for these guys, as Steve actually does a live show on his YouTube channel where he talks to other artists and everything else. And you can check out, I think they only do audio for now, that they might be looking into video, but check out the audio of the Time Shifters podcast. Like, we appreciate being able to talk with them and interact and kind of network and everything with them. It was a ton of fun.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, it was an incredible experience. I wouldn't be remiss if I didn't talk about one of my personal favorite moments from the entire weekend. Nope. Yep, I'm going to talk about it. So in between some of the panels, they were having contests, like trivia contests to win prizes and, things of that nature. And one of the topics that came up, he was like, we need some people who have knowledge about pro wrestling, which...
He had no interest.
Guilty. You've only been watching it for almost 40 years now. And I got to go up and, go one-on-one with another person who claimed to know a lot about wrestling. Just one-on-one, right? And the category was like famous tag teams or whatever. And it was back and forth, like I name one, they name one, back and forth until somebody stopped. And I kid you not, like this is not an exaggeration, so don't lie on the podcast now. But it was me versus an entire room of people that were helping this guy go on against me. And it was so funny because I'm just rattling off names of famous tag teams, and he's getting help from everybody in the room, with the exception of probably you, although I think I heard you yell a name at him at one point. But we won't.
We were trying to help you at one point too, because, but I mean, we joke again, like they were helping him, but the guy was great that it was going against. They were actually sitting right in front of us, and his son, asked questions. It was a lot of fun. They ended up in a tie because they didn't stop. They weren't going like, all right, you get this, and they also had their Nicolas Cage bag of crap or something. So it had a lot of mixed stuff that you're able to pull stuff out of. That you got, Drax, and you also got a Fennec Shan bobblehead and stuff, but they hand out a bunch of Hocus Pocus Funko Pops and stuff as well. You got the Fennec and Funko Pop and stuff, but it was a lot of fun. But yeah, you were taking on the entire panel room.
It was so funny. they were just throwing names and suggestions at him. I did trip up once or twice too, but it was really fun and a really fun experience. I wound up pulling out of the bag initially a copy of Bob Marley One Love, and go back in our archives and check out how we felt about that movie. Love that movie as well, but got the DVD copy of him. The guy that I went up against wound up pulling this Funko soda collectible, and he seemed to be disappointed in the fact that he didn't get the DVD of the movie. And I'm like, well, let's just swap, because I've seen the movie. I like the movie. And come to find out, he hadn't seen the movie yet. So his first time watching it's going to be on that Blu-ray. So congratulations to, that
share some movie love with
him.
I
got to talk about that for a little bit, and him and his wonderful family too, that we got to, hang out with for a little while and, attend these panels and have some really fun conversations with too. But it was a really fun highlight of the weekend. It was a good time.
Yeah, for me, it was still trying not to geek out and fanboy too hard, because we got done talking to Katee and having a great 5-10 minutes with her there, and then we went down to get in line with the press for the panels and stuff, and we're talking about that experience and how great it was, and we turn around and there's Katee Sackhoff walking down, and she just looks and goes, "Hey guys,
good to see you again."
I'm like, good to see you again. Like, all right, I'm just going to be over here fanboying for the next, because she was just so sweet, so kind, so incredible. And yeah, Katee, if you happen to come, we talked to you about coming on the podcast. We hope that we can talk to you sometime, and we'd love to be able to talk to you about the industry and, AI and where everything is, and have a real conversation about everything. Because, we do try to have structure and stuff with the podcast, but we do try to talk openly. Like when it comes to the TV reviews and the movie reviews, we try our best not to talk about it before the episode, so we can have kind of a real conversation about how we feel about it. Like, we have very similar tastes in a lot of stuff, but it's being able to talk about those differences here while we're talking about it the first time, so we can have kind of something real and real reactions to a lot of stuff, even with the news stories. I mean, look up the news stories, but we try to have real reactions. We don't talk about them beforehand. We want to be able to have that kind of friend to friend debate and that real conversations. And as we've said and we've defended with creatives and talking about our dislike of the use of AI, like, we're really wanting to keep it real and grounded and truthful, and we're putting on a show, but we're not trying to put on a show, and just be honest and open. And that's what she does with her podcast as well. Like, she has some really, if you haven't checked out the Katee Sackhoff show, which it originally was called the blah 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 with Katee Sackhoff, which was a lot of fun and stuff, but she does a really great job with her podcast, talking with a lot of big celebrity guests, but she gets them to talk about real things and tough things at times. And there's some really great episodes, so definitely go check her out and see how many episodes you can get through of her podcast. Some of them are video, a lot of them are audio, because I think she didn't do video for a while and she's done that. But it was just amazing to be able to talk with her about podcasting, about everything. And it was just a great experience overall from the expo that I'm looking forward to, applying and going back as press again next year and seeing who else we can have a fun conversation and talk with.
Absolutely, and that's, now that we've gotten a little bit of a taste of attending these cons, it's probably not the last one that we're going to try to get press access to. So moving forward, we are going to try to get some other conventions as well, some of the bigger ones, and who knows what can happen, right? We're going to shoot big. We're going to try to get some of the bigger conventions that you all know exist. So we're going to keep swinging for that fence, and hopefully, we'll connect one time and get to connect one of the really, really, really big ones. Either the one that was going on this weekend as well was New York Comic Con, which is a huge one, and obviously the big behemoth is San Diego. So that's one that's bucket list to cover as press. We've been fortunate enough to attend San Diego Comic Con as fans once before, and that's a really hard ticket to get. So if we're fortunate enough to maybe you get press access to that, we would have no problem going back to San Diego for that. But yeah, definitely not the last you'll see of us covering these types of events. So we're excited for the future of that, because we had a really good time with this one, and I think we got a really good game plan to attack them moving forward for sure.
Yeah, so thanks again to the Cincinnati Comic Expo. We had a great time. We love being able to cover everything and see everything that you all put on, and bravo for what can be a very difficult move of having to move venues and stuff, and think you did an excellent job, and just bravo to everyone who put that on. Absolutely. But coming up this week, we have kind of not one of the last, but it's one of those that's kind of can be very mixed on. So it's Venom: The Last Dance. It's the final Venom film out of this trilogy that Sony's put on. You know, a lot of people are mixed on it because you have Venom without Spider-Man, and they've been fun, but they've been silly and quirky, which is an aspect of Venom and stuff. But we have what is being said to be the final film, so it's going to be interesting to see exactly how they wrap this up, because we are hearing rumors that maybe there's going to be some merging of storylines from Venom into Spider-Man 4, but Marvel and Sony are still butting heads about a lot of that. But I'm curious to see exactly how they end this up, because the trailers for it has just been wild and crazy and over the top, and just to see exactly how they put that film to kind of rest for now.
Yeah, I'm excited to check that one out. It's been one that we've been waiting on for a minute, it feels like. It seems like it's one of those, like we jokingly say, in some cases, we're excited for a movie to finally come out so we can look at different trailers when it comes to movies. But this Venom trailer feels like it's one of the ones that's been in every movie we've seen for like the last 6 months. But excited for this one to finally hit theaters. We get this conclusion of this Venom saga that's been kind of a mixed bag of results. I love the first Venom. The second Venom was fun, but not without its troubles. Hopefully they can get it back for this third one. It looks like it's got the potential to be a lot of fun, but I'm excited to go check that one out and cover it next week for sure.
Yeah, completely opposite side of the spectrum. We have Conclave, which is a religious drama about the Pope and everything else that's going on. There's some hidden messages that are being found, and they're trying to go through everybody. And it's got Ralph Fiennes and a lot of really big, good actors in it. And I'll probably just throw in that William Dafoe's in it. He probably isn't, but he's been in 99% of the movies this year, so it's not that hard to just say William Dafoe in it, and you're going to hit it most of the time.
Yeah, more often than not. He's kind of like another like Samuel L. Jackson, who seems to be in literally every movie, and you're probably right about him being in 90% of them.
On Demand this week is one of our favorite animated films of the year. We had such a fun time with this, but Transformers 1 is coming to on-demand purchases on October 22nd. That is what I'm really looking forward to picking up and watching again, because I had such a great time with it in theaters.
For sure. Go back in our archives and check out our review of that episode, but excited to get it on demand and, getting a digital copy of that for sure.
On streaming, we have Canary Black on Amazon Prime on October 24th, so this is a Kate Beckinsale action film that's coming out, so I haven't really seen anything on it, so I'm being curious to check that out and see exactly, what that movie is about, because I don't even think I've seen a trailer or a poster until I looked up of what we had coming out this week. So it'd be interesting to see exactly how, because Amazon has done some really good movies, so they've had a few misses and stuff too, so I'm curious to see how that one works out.
For sure.
On the TV side, we have Star Trek Lower Decks, so it's the final season. Season 5 of that will premiere on Paramount Plus on October 24th, but we also have on Amazon Like a Dragon Yakuza that will be on October 24th as well. Like, if you haven't played that video game series, it is wild, it is crazy, ridiculous, over the top. So I'm really looking forward to how they translate that into a live action series.
Yeah, it's definitely one to check out and see. It's either going to go one of two ways. I think it's either going to be brilliant or it's going to be a hot mess, and I'm ready to check out either one and see which one it is. Sure. But that's going to do it for this week's episode. Once again, we cannot thank Cincy Comic Expo enough for allowing us to come and do this special episode that we've done on the convention. Next week, we will be reviewing Venom: The Last Dance, but we are also going to be reviewing Netflix's anime-style Terminator Zero series. One season of it already on Netflix. We're going to give you our thoughts on that. Very much looking forward to that. Once again, thank you, Cincy Comic Expo, for having us out. Go check out the description for some of the people that we've shouted out. Give their properties a listen as well. But until next week, I'm Josh, he's Brad, and we'll see you then.